Today's topic is book covers. And if you've got 5 minutes, I've got 5 tips to help you achieve the very best one you possibly can. What is it that draws you to a book? I mean, when you're not looking for a specific book, if you're just glancing through, say, an online catalog, what draws you to a book? Or equally, what repels you? And if you say the cover, you're saying the same thing as most people. Now, it's widely believed that a book cover is an author's best marketing tool. There's no hard evidence to support this, but in anecdotal evidence, it seems that readers can either be drawn in or repelled by a book cover. So if you're writing a book, no matter how you're having it published, it's crucial that you get it right. If you've secured a traditional book publishing contract, there will be a clause in your contract that refers to the cover in some way. Now, it is best for you to have some control over what goes on the cover. Usually they will say the author gets an opportunity to review the final cover. But if you're smart, you will also have a clause that says the author gets an opportunity to either say yay or nay on the final cover. Depends on the publisher, and it depends on the relationship you have with that publisher. And if you're publishing it yourself, then obviously you're going to be in charge of what's on that cover. Having said that, what do you really know about a cover? If you don't know very much about what a cover should look like for your book or for any book for that matter, and you don't know anything about graphic design, then you really can't have a very educated opinion about what the book cover should look like. All you'll know is whether or not you like it. And there is actually nothing that turns people off more than an amateurish, shitty cover on a book. So no matter if you're publishing it yourself or if you're working with an editor or a cover designer for yourself or a cover designer with a traditional publisher, you need to know what you're talking about. So today I have 5 tips to help you understand book covers better and to get the very best result. Now, before we start, I just want you to understand that there are 4 general categories of what a book cover can look like. The first one is photographic. This should come as no surprise to you that a book that uses a photograph of some sort on the cover of the book is considered photographic. The second one is illustrated, just as clear-cut, an illustration. Now, I don't want to get into whether or not the illustration is done by an actual artist or by AI. We won't talk about that at this stage. However, know that you could have an illustrated book cover. The third type would be the minimalist cover. A minimalist cover has very little design on it, but it does have some design. And of course, the fourth one is typography only. And that means that if you use typography and you don't use any other kind of design element on it, then that becomes your design element. I must say that typography type book covers are used generally only for nonfiction, which leads me to my tips. Tip number 1, start with an understanding of your book's theme and mood. Now again, this should be a no-brainer. Your book cover should actually represent something about what's inside your book. If you have a fancy book cover that has nothing to do with the book's content, then it is misleading for your readers. And frankly, it's just plain stupid. Why would you have a book cover that does not communicate anything to the readers about what's inside the book? So start with that. Understand your book, which also suggests another aspect, and that is if you're working with a book cover designer, then that book cover designer needs to know what the book is about. If you're working with a designer who says, I don't need to know anything about the book, step away from that book designer because you're not going to get the appropriate book cover. Tip number 2. Know your genre. This is really important because readers do look for certain visual cues within the genre that they like to read. So it's important for you to do some research and to find out what book covers within your genre look like. But of course, as I said, you need to know your genre first. I did a video on genre some time ago and I'll put a link to it. Tip number 3, select colors for the cover that evoke the appropriate emotion. If you think about it for a moment, you can think about various genres. So this is related to genre, but we're talking about color specifically here. Think about thrillers and mystery books. The colors are usually dark. They're going to be moody. You're going to have black, grays, deep reds. But think about that in contrast to a romance book, which is going to have soft pastel hues on it. It's not going to use the dark, moody colors of a thriller. Fantasy books use colors like purples that are vibrant, that are magical. If your book is nonfiction and self-help, you probably want to give it some kind of optimistic kind of hues. At the very least, they should be bright. If you're writing a business book, though, a nonfiction business book, you want to have it look authoritative, blues and grays, the kinds of things that make people want to trust what's within the covers. And if your nonfiction book is about health-related topics, soft hues like greens and blues and beiges are often used to evoke sort of the trustworthiness of what's within the covers, unless, of course, your book is called Life is Terminal, when black is probably the best color. This is one that I designed a while back. Bottom line is stick to a cohesive palette. Make sure that the background of the book cover and the colors of the typography blend together well. And that brings me to tip number 4, which is about fonts. Use no more than 2 readable, relevant fonts. Now, what I mean by readable should be very clear. There should be no question on the part of the reader when they look at the book cover to see what the name of the book is and what the name of the author is, because there are some fonts that are not so readable. And the second aspect of that is it should be relevant. There are some fonts, for example, that would be more appropriate for a book that's set in the 1920s, or a book that's set in medieval times, or a book that is a nonfiction business book should be fairly clear and straightforward. And if you don't know the difference between a serif font and a sans serif font, you really should look it up. SERIF for serif, sans serif is SANS-SERIF. Sans, of course, is the French word for without. The serifs are little flourishes on the ends of letters, which is very readable, and this is the sort of font that you use for the interior of the book, and you might use it in a way for a cover, for a title, for example. But a sans serif font is also not something that you would use for the interior of the book. It isn't as readable, but it definitely makes for good headlines. And when it comes to the fonts and the typography, you should also play a little bit with hierarchy, which should go where, but remember that the title of the book should always be larger than the author's name, unless you are a very well-known author and what is drawing the readers into your book is you. Other than that, make sure that the title of the book is clear and larger than the author's name. Tip number 5, select imagery that reflects the story. And this ties back to tip number 1. Don't put pretty pictures on the front cover of your book just because you like them. It needs to tie into the story. You need to use relevant, high-quality images. Make sure that the images are of good quality. And the visuals should be focused on one element. It shouldn't have a whole bunch of different elements on the cover. Don't put in a whole bunch of different pictures just because you think they're relevant and you like them. It's very distracting for the reader. So just putting it all together, there are 3 things that you need to remember about your book cover. First of all, use contrast to make the title of the book and the author's name stand out. So if you have imagery on your book and you're going to put the titles over it, make sure that there's enough contrast that you can actually read that typography. The second summary element is, as I've mentioned, make sure you have a focal point. This is it's a typical basic design rule. There should be a focal point. And finally, summing it all up, is make sure you use what we call genre signals. I've mentioned these in the tips. Color, imagery, the type of typography, they should all be signals to the reader that this is what this book is all about. It can be really fun to learn about cover design, but if you're not a designer and you don't have any background or skill in the design area, please make sure you get somebody else to do it for you. There's a lot of people around who know how to design covers. Happy writing. Subscribe to Write, Fix, Repeat, and maybe I can help you improve your writing knowledge and skills. 5 tips at a time.